It's the Kink Consultant podcast, where we're turning up the heat on all things kink and dating, relationships, and pop culture. So close the door, plug in your headphones, and let's get down to it. Hey everybody, welcome to the Kink Consultant podcast. In this episode, I sit down with Tess and Kels, the brilliant minds behind Squirm and co-hosts of Porn Nerds podcast. We talk about how they went from Whole Foods lunch chats to creating sex ed brand for adults, why eroticism belongs in education, and how porn can actually help us talk about sex. If you've ever struggled to express your desires or just want sex ed that's actually fun, this one's for you. Welcome, Kels and Tess.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, when I came across your profile, I thought, oh my gosh, people who are comfortable talking about porn and also helping couples have conversations about intimacy when it's normally like at the stage where it's like, oh, just talk about it. But then with zero help on how to talk about it, I was like, these are my people.
Thank you. Yeah, we're so excited to have come across you as well. Love what you're doing.
So how did you two meet? Were you the two friends in the group who like talked about sex openly in a way nobody else did? Or like what brought you two together?
We worked at a chiropractic clinic, like what was probably 7 years ago now?
Yeah, 8, 7, 8.
And we would take like extraordinarily long lunch breaks and we would go to the Whole Foods hot bar and we'd have like hour and a half conversations about sex and relationships and non-monogamy and dating. And that was like where our friendship really formed and solidified. It's funny because I feel like we really didn't hang out much at that time outside of these like hour and a half paid lunch breaks.
You were coworkers.
We were coworkers.
You were just coworkers who were like, let's go get our lunch and stay out for 90 minutes.
I think we both were opening relationships at this time. And so we had a lot in common in that regard. Yeah. So we weren't like the friends in the group that were talking about sex, but we were the friends at the office that were talking about sex. Yeah.
And did people know that not just the friendships, but that you were in like open relationships and you were exploring all of these things?
I don't think at the beginning. Yeah. I don't think it was. I think that's why we felt really safe with each other because we realized like, oh, this is the thing I'm doing too. Oh, you're doing it too? Okay. Yeah. Well, what's it like for you? And yeah, just sitting there like picking at the hot bar. Really, it was just grazing the bulk section.
Yes. Yeah. And like using the makeup samples.
Yeah. We're like putting on blush. We're like, okay, well, so did he call? And you know.
Yeah. I swear to God, this is such a movie meet cute type of thing. Like two friends walking around Whole Foods. Talking about their sex lives. This was not a work trauma bond. This was a work like love, sex, freedom bond.
Yes. No, it was a great work environment too. Like still are in touch with the people from that practice. And so it wasn't a trauma bond. And I just remember always after those conversations, like going to my boyfriend at the time and being like, I just love Tess so much. Like just like so in awe of her. And I think, yeah, just like so formative to that part of my life and obviously every part since.
Yeah. We also had some really fun creative projects together. We did like video projects. And I remember thinking that you were so on top of it with all the production and that you like had so much experience, like creating all these video, theater, all this stuff. And so I think that also in the back of my mind was like, oh, maybe we can do more together. And, you know, that didn't happen until later, but it definitely planted the seed.
So you were collaborating on other projects before you founded Squirm together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So what is Squirm?
Squirm is our sex ed for adults platform. And really the focus is sexual communication. So helping people just talk more openly about sex. So that's sort of like the umbrella mission is just to destigmatize the topics of sex and porn. Obviously, that's a focus area for us. And just make these conversations a little easier, a little more accessible for people kind of at wherever they are in relationships or just with their friends too. Just kind of open it up in general. So with that, we have a few different ways that we, you know, provide that education or provide those resources for people. And we have our very first product that we threw out there was an audio course called Oral Hygiene. And it's a 10-day sex communication audio course. It's designed to be consumed while you brush your teeth, hence the name Oral Hygiene.
Love it.
There's like this habit stacking component. I think you read the James Clear book and you were like, habit stacking. if you want to learn something new, tack it onto something you're already doing. People hopefully are brushing their teeth every day. Let's just like give them that opportunity to also take in these bite-sized sex communication lessons. So we have that out there. That was kind of one of our first creative projects with Squirm. But we have a conversation deck, we have events, we have a podcast, we do workshops, and tons of just sort of one-off collaborations too, or different pop-up events and things like that. But the whole goal is just like help people get out of their heads, into their bodies, talking about it with partners, with friends, and have fun while doing it.
How did you make the leap from just being friends and talking about it to doing it?
Yeah.
Right? So like you put out a product right away, like the product being the course, as opposed to doing webinars or even like one-on-one talks.
We stopped working at the chiropractic clinic. Tess went first because she went to grad school in Amsterdam to be like a certified sex free.
That's what the degree was called.
That's the designation.
So official.
No, so we stopped working together. I went to grad school and Kels was doing other work and things. And then COVID hit. I came back to the US and we reconnected as friends, but also we were both just kind of itching for a project because it's like COVID and I don't know, needed something to do with my time. And I'd also just spent all this time in Amsterdam studying sexuality and gender and porn and sex ed for adults and all these things that I just wanted something to do with it. Yeah, she was involved in all these creative projects here. And so we just decided, I remember being on the phone with you and I was like walking through Portland, just some meandering COVID walk. And we were like, let's do a like sexy sex ed project. Like, let's do sex ed, but let's make it sexy. Let's make it fun. Let's bring in some porny elements. Let's bring in some eroticism and make something that people are going to want to consume, not like a dry textbook lesson on, the reproductive system, but like really role model what cool sex communication can look like, what hot sex communication look like. So we kind of planted the seed for sexy sex ed. And in that moment, I don't think we were thinking like, let's start a company. I think we were just like, let's do a pandemic project and do something fun.
Yeah. So, because my background is like a lot of film and theater stuff, and obviously that wasn't happening during the pandemic. So we started to kind of like sketch out what this sexy sex ed would look like. And I don't remember exactly at what point this happened. We had like an Airbnb booked in Mexico and like a couple people lined up to do it because it was going to be like part porn, part lecture kind of. Mm-hmm. And then we zoomed out. We were like, is this safe to do still? It was like vaccine time, but still kind of like, is this safe? This is probably going to be really expensive. Let's maybe we pivot. Let's like start a brand, start a company, like start releasing some blogs, build a website, just kind of build that. Tess always says like, let's get the house ready before we do like big projects. So we kind of like got the house ready. And that's when Squirm really formed as the like umbrella that's been generating all the things that have followed. So yeah, I think it was like a pivot from wanting to make kind of an erotic sex ed series. And that's still on our wish list to do at some point. But
the Mexico trip.
Just some sort of fun. Yeah. Like sexy sex ed educational porn type series, because that's something I discovered in Amsterdam was this whole edu porn subgenre, and it kind of blew my mind. Like I'd never really seen anything like that I thought was really hot and effective. That was the inspiration, definitely moving into Squirm, was just trying to bring more of that energy and more of those resources to people.
Oh, totally. Because I think so much of what's out there, even a lot of the stuff I put out there, I feel is very sanitized for consumption, because that is the standard model for how to educate people about sex, because you want to be as objective as possible to make it palatable. But that is in direct opposition of actually making it erotic and sexy.
Totally. Yeah. I think it was like one of the kind of core tenets of what we decided when like everything that we're putting out want it to have, it's like the 3 E's of like educational, entertaining, and erotic, even if it's not super explicit. I think just having some, I guess there's like this idea that for it to be educational, it has to be sanitized, like you're saying, to like build some kind of credibility. And I think that can speak to like our just overall squeamishness as a society around being sexual people, and like why can't things be hot and also teach you stuff in the process.
What does that look like in practice, right? How do you inject eroticism into education?
Well, I think, so I'm going to take like our one of our workshops as an example. It's like one of my favorite things that we have. It's like, so what are you into? Learning to voice your desires. It's the workshop. And, you know, it's funny because we have this like PowerPoint presentation where we break down kind of all the different buckets of things that would comprise somebody's answer of what they're into. But I think just by virtue of having like a slide that has like tease balls, like I want you to use a vibrator on my clit before you penetrate me, like just having really specific language, it is hot. I think when we're speaking about like using these terms kind of explicitly, I think there is just kind of a sense of eroticism around that by virtue of what the subject matter is, you know?
Just even putting words to things that we're not used to putting words on or not comfortable putting words on brings it out into the open, and that is sexy.
Yeah.
And just hearing people in the workshop, we always have a part where people can read their examples out loud. And we like strongly encourage them to do it because it's one thing to write it. It's a whole other thing to hear yourself say it out loud. And it is one of those sort of juxtapositions of sexy and clerical when you're like in a room with a PowerPoint with these chairs all lined up and fluorescent lighting and all that. It's not necessarily the sexiest vibe. But you're also hearing yourself say these things and like getting comfortable with the sound of your voice, saying dirty words or getting comfortable just having that come out. And I think there's so much value to just putting people in a position where they can practice it before they're really in the moment or whether before they're like deploying it in maybe the higher stakes situation. So kind of working in that, little bits of eroticism into what's more classically an educational forum.
Yeah.
I know, because it's building in safety too. It's like you are not going to fall apart by speaking your desires out loud. So like practice it and like get used to the fact that this is not going to end the world for you.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's like contextualizing the level of eroticism. Like at the workshop, it might feel a little more restrained. Whereas like with the podcast, you know, we're pulling in audio from porn, like you're able to lean into these things, like kind of trying to find the right level of like how much to push that aspect of sexuality depending on what the medium is. So.
Yeah. So I deal with a lot of kinksters, right? That is, I am the kink consultant. Most of my clients are kinky. So one of the reasons they find it difficult to talk about what they're interested in is it's not even put out in media in general. Like they have never seen real representation of anything they're into outside of maybe fringe porn that isn't even when they were growing up didn't really exist as much as it exists now, right? So sometimes in my position, I'm sort of like, oh, non-kinky sex is so much more prevalent. So I guess my question to you is, why do you think it's so hard for people to talk about sex in general and to speak about their desires?
I mean, I think you brought up a good point there, which is we don't have a ton of role modeling. You know, like the kinky clients that you have, like they're not seeing a ton of role modeling in the media that they consume, the non-fringe porn that they might watch. I think we're such social language sponges that we soak up what we consume and what we are immersed in. And when we don't have those sort of scripts that we can hear and that we can then internalize, I think for better or for worse, you know, like sometimes the way we internalize what's around us can be harmful. But when we don't have that in a sort of holistically sexual way, then we're left just trying to figure it out like in our heads, you know, and there's so many other things that are role modeled to us, like talking about your career. There's so many options when you're in school or with your friends or your parents or people in your life to like talk about jobs. What do they do for work? What do you like to do? All that is just kind of like out in the open. And we don't necessarily have a hard time. It's not awkward to talk about like what you like about your job, you know? Yep. It's just out there. I think.
In fact, it's encouraged to talk about your career, make that part of your identity, and then speak positively about it to everyone who will listen.
Or like what you like to cook. You know, there isn't a lot of role modeling. And I think the reason there isn't a lot of role modeling is that just in general, we have a very baseline puritanical society that is very uncomfortable with the topic of sex and like to control the narrative around sex. And so if there isn't much of that out there for us to access, then, you know, there isn't that threat to what that might offer us as a people.
We are language sponges, right? Yeah. So visually, we may be given a ton of input, like into our brains of sexualized imagery, even whether it's kinky or not, but the language is rarely paired with it. Yeah. So we're really left confused.
Yeah, and I think that's a big part of why we've kind of zeroed on the communication piece of sex, because sex ed is a very kind of underdeveloped education system in
Yes.
our society in general. I think in high school, middle school, like formal school educators don't really want to touch like the topic of what turns you on, what feels good. And I'm not saying they should. I think there's like legit reasons and liabilities for that. Could be improved, but parents may not want to touch that with their kids either. So it's kind of like, where do they get that information? At that age, it's like peer to peer, which is like clunky, kind of like best case scenario, and like dangerous worst case scenario, right?
Yeah,
like depending on kind of how bold someone's feeling, it can be either really awkward or bad. And then with the communication stuff, it's like people do turn to porn, but very rarely in porn are you going to see the communication between two people negotiating their boundaries or what they're into or like what their hard lines are. That stuff, those conversations are probably happening on set, but that's on the cutting room floor because it's often to promote this kind of spontaneous in the moment fantasy, as is mainstream depictions of sex just in movies. So it's like there's really just not a lot of places where you're able to like understand how those kind of conversations can even happen. Then you become an adult and you feel like, well, never learned that. Everyone else seems to know it. So you just kind of like fake it till you make it. And it just a lot of us just never really get to understand how to put that into practice.
Hey, if you're loving this episode or honestly even just vibing with the podcast overall, go ahead and tap that 5-star rating. It takes 2 seconds and it really helps us grow this kinky little corner of the world. Because that's what we're building here, right? A space to feel seen, get curious, and explore. All from the privacy of our own headphones. And if something made you laugh, cringe, gasp, or pause to reflect, drop a comment. I want to know what stuck with you or shocked you. The fake it till you make it thing is so real. Like, I mean, I did it as well. I started at a slightly earlier age with the kink stuff because, again, I was like, I don't know why I'm into what I'm into, but I know what I need. So, like, but there was nowhere to get the information from, flying blind.
Totally.
And to your point that we all go through that evolution, it's very rare to have someone just know it all. And then we all gravitate towards the friends who probably like the three of us, right?
Yeah.
We were these like...
The sex friends.
That was our role, to like know about these things, and then we took it seriously and we became sponges for everything we could figure out, and now we do what we do.
I mean, I think one reason I love the porn element to it all, and something that we're trying to do with Squirm, is just offer porn as one of those resources. I know porn is not supposed to be sex ed. It's generally never intended to be sex ed. It's this entertainment, sexy, fun fantasy that we can turn to, and that's true, but also because it's kind of generally uncouth to just like talk openly about sex in all scenarios, it is a place where people can go to get some of that role modeling. And there are aspects of porn or subgenres of porn that do a pretty excellent job of providing some of that sexual communication role modeling for people that like we didn't get, that we were kind of, left us searching for in the dark, like we're trying to figure out how to get what we wanted with a partner. So kind of like destigmatizing porn, helping people remember it's not all one thing, and it's not all what most people are probably picturing when they just like think about porn. Like there's actually a ton that it can offer us to help us increase our vocabularies and get more comfortable with our partners and all of that.
Well, we're fighting a current battle where porn is demonized.
Absolutely.
And there are states right now that aren't allowing people to access porn without a proof of ID. And then there are porn sites they're like, nah, fuck it. None of your people get this because we're not playing this game.
Yeah.
Obviously, you guys are located in Portland, Oregon.
Yeah.
You're not one of the states dealing with that. I'm in Nevada, also not one of the states dealing with it. But I also fear sometimes it's just a matter of time until we're all dealing with that. How do you combat that narrative around porn being bad? I want to start there because I want to, like, we could have made the entire episode about this. But, like, the first thing that pops out is so many people are against it. I think that the first step is to be like, porn isn't bad.
We spent 6 episodes on this with our podcast. Narrative, because there's so much to unpack. I think from my perspective, a lot of it is the first step in kind of combating that narrative is like validating some of the reasons why people do feel that way, right? Like it's not kind of like the main spoiler alert conclusion of the show and for porn nerds was like, this is a really nuanced topic there are certainly manifestations and expressions of how how porn presents in people's lives that like might not feel healthy or good for them. And so I think like any good conversation, it's important to like address and understand where that stuff is coming from. But then I think you have to start to kind of peel back the layers to see like, okay, well, how much of this is porn as a whole? How much of this is the type of porn that's being watched? How much of this is like the porn production practices? How much of this is like just the internet and our ability to kind of like easily slide into habits that don't feel good to us because we have like, I could pull up a million porn sites right now in the next 30 seconds on my phone. Like
literally,
how do we attribute the things that are making this force feel negative in people's lives? Because yeah, like it can feel really out of control for some people. Also, how much of like our kind of reflex porn bad thing has to do with that puritanical culture that we're swimming in, has to do with being in sex negative society, has to do with our own kind of shame and embarrassment about our desires. So word soup, but
no, not word soup.
No.
It was not. It was so heavy because I'm just thinking about there are so many insecurities that come with porn too, because you are shown the really muscular man with the perfect cock, perfect in quotes, by the way, like perfect cock. The woman with the, again, quote, perfect body, right? And I think that that can be quite intimidating to people as well. So that is mixed into it as well of the specimen of person put in front of you. And also the person who says the perfect thing or acts the right way and does the exact thing someone's imagining because it's geared towards one person. All of these things were popping into my mind as you went through it, Kels, because I was like, it's multifaceted. Like the reason people do demonize it, but also therein also lies why it's great, you know? It's a fantasy world you can escape into as long as you realize you're in that fantasy world.
That's exactly it. Is like the sort of porn literacy piece to it is like being able to put porn in its context as fantasy, as entertainment, which we do with a lot of other forms of media. We don't really have a problem determining whether Vin Diesel is like what every dude is going to look like or just what this action hero looks like. You know, it's easier for us to contextualize movies that we see or other, you know, ads that we see and say, okay, like that movie's really fun to watch. I'm going to leave the theater and be like titillated and excited about whatever Captain America just did, but I don't really expect my boyfriend to like drive our car out of a, you know, helicopter and whatever. It's just a completely different context than our reality. And that context is such an anxiety reliever because you're not expecting those things. You're extending your reality for this fantasy experience and you can enjoy it. And then you re-enter reality and you're like, all right, that's just not what, you know, this is actually like, and that's okay. With porn, there's no one telling you when you're 12 years old or 45 years old, like, hey, that thing you're watching is super hot, but like, that's not actually what it has to be like. You know, don't worry. Don't put pressure on yourself. Don't freak out if that's not what your body looks like, or that's not what the sex you have looks like. That's just a way to entertain you and get you off. You know, no one's like riding shotgun with you to tell you that. So you end up watching this stuff and then wondering like, well, fuck, like that's not what it's like for me. Or is that what she's going to expect? You know, all that stuff. And there's nowhere to really put those anxieties to bed.
Yeah. Or even if someone is telling you that, because like, I feel like maybe in high school, someone told me like, porn's not what real sex is. Okay. But then like, what is real sex? Like you don't have really data points kind of at the ready to be able to compare it to like you would with Fast and the Furious, where it's like, that's not what driving's like. And then you go and you drive to school and you like see what driving's like. Like you're not watching other people have real, quote unquote, real sex. So it's like you, even if someone does say that to you, like you don't, where do you go from there? You know,
it's impossible to navigate that context. Honestly, as you're describing that, I'm thinking that's probably why American Pie popped off. Of teenage sex was perfectly displayed in that movie. But like, speaking of media, you know, part of me is hopeful that we're having conversations like this today, that in the future, it might get easier for kids to understand, especially in a world of AI where they're going to grow up knowing you have to question everything you see and know, like it might not be real. Do you remember that story about Gilligan's Island? When that show was doing really well, the US Coast Guard was getting actual written letters saying, go save these people, because people aren't used to, the American population wasn't so used to TV that they didn't realize, not everyone realized that was a TV show and that wasn't like reality TV, like the news capturing what was happening.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
That's what we're describing
That's
right now with porn.
Yeah.
Like people
Yeah.
just think like what they're watching is the real thing that's happening for everybody else. And I guess it's sort of a keeping up with the Joneses thing. We all want to pretend like we're just as far ahead as everyone else. But then when the benchmark is this like fantasy world, you can't be. And then no one's talking about it to tell you what it really is.
Exactly. Yeah. We all want to be normal, whatever that means. Nobody really knows what normal is, you know, and there isn't really one normal, but we're all like chasing this sort of sexual normal. And porn is the most available, most ubiquitous example of sex. So it's like, all right, I guess that's normal. And then it just, fucks us all up from there.
But then I think it gets even more fucked up because it's like, I also do think porn is a great resource to draw inspiration from for how to like ways to have sex and new things that you want to try with a partner. So it's like, you kind of have to talk out of both sides of your mouth in this conversation and say like, this is not sex ed. This is, do not just like copy, paste, repeat whatever you're seeing, but also because of the nature of this content, you're going to get to see stuff that you don't really have access to in other mediums. So like if you see somebody choking somebody, like maybe there is a way to like be inspired by that and bring it to a partner, but there has to be this chunk of like this middle step that's often on the cutting room floor of like, well, how do you choke someone safely? Do you feel comfortable with that? Are you into it? Like there has to be.
Where do you like the hand on you?
Yeah.
How do you like the hand? How strong? Like all the specifics.
Right. To get you there. And so it's like, it is an amazing tool to learn about what you want to do sexually, but just you have to talk about it first.
Absolutely. And I have sent very specific porn to partners to be like, here's a really good video of somebody getting spanked, and I really like how the lecture goes. And things like that. So like I have used porn in that way of like, here's a visual aid, let's talk about it. And I encourage my clients to do the same. I have them send me porn that they enjoy so that we can dissect what their fantasy is and how they can achieve it and relay that to a partner.
Yeah,
totally.
Yeah.
No,
I agree completely.
It's an amazing tool for that.
It really is. It's not what it's made for. That's not its number one use, but I'm going to tell you those visual aids and being able to dissect it and say like, what did you like about it? And then helping people discover that in their own sex life or inject that into their own sex life.
Yeah, no, for sure. We were just talking to somebody today. It's like a potential collaboration partner. And an example they've brought up is like somebody who wants their partner to take more control. And I think that like bringing that to a partner feels like hard because maybe you're more submissive. And so you don't really know like how you want your partner to take control of you, but you know you want it. But like, how do you instruct that? And if you instruct like, I want you to sort of dominate in this way, then you feel like you're not really being submissive in that moment. And so I think especially for those scenarios, it's so nice to be like, this is really hot to me because like she's restrained, or this is really hot to me because of what the partner is saying, like those different elements, because just like take control is like, I mean, gosh, there's so many different ways somebody can take control of you, right? And if you hit the wrong one, if you're like violent and they don't want that, they just want to be like a pillow princess, then it's like, could really be traumatizing, you know?
But also take control might not mean sex at all. It might mean the foreplay.
Yeah.
Dominant role might not mean anything in the sex world or in the bedroom. You know what I mean?
Yes.
That is why kink is so complicated, because when people say, oh, I'm dominant, I find a lot of men, not to gender it, but this is what I'm finding. A lot of men say I'm dominant, and what they really mean is sexually dominant, and they like to take control of everything that happens like on the mattress, right? Yeah. And when a woman says she's looking for a dominant man, she's looking for the praise kink, the someone paying attention to them and like seeing different parts of them throughout the day and calling them out, right? And that's that person taking control. We're even in this world where we identify as kinky, we sometimes speak different languages.
Yes. Totally.
No, I feel like our just general sexual vocabulary needs like 1,000 more words at least, you know, and just like the nuance that's involved in these dynamics and these feelings and these desires is like, it's really a beautiful and confusing experience to have, you know, whether it's kinky or not, just to be kind of like navigating what turns you on with this person might not turn you on with this person. Why is that? You know, what turns me on this month might not turn me on as much next month. Why is that? There's just so many layers to it. But when you are left with not a lot of words, not a lot of opportunities to talk, then it all just kind of gets jumbled into like, I'm not really sure what I want or how to get it. And that's, you know, can make people really just kind of freeze up and feel so defeated too, which is hard.
That is really hard, because then maybe they try the thing and it doesn't work. And then once again, there's not a lot of language to discuss conflict. And that is true not only in sex, but outside of sex too. I don't think we're taught the language to handle conflict and work through it in the same way.
Yeah, just kind of boundaries or your needs and how to uphold them and be kind and listen well. Like, I think all the things that come along with talking about sex openly and honestly translate out to the rest of our lives really well, and or can, you know, in terms of just being attuned to someone, listening, knowing yourself, knowing how to stand up for yourself. Like, all of that has this ripple effect when you practice it. And I think the other way around too, like, you can practice it in other parts of life and bring it into your sex life. It doesn't have to start with sex by any means, but they're very transferable skills. It's on my resume for sure.
So, like, one of the things though we're talking about is conversation. You also have a card deck that kind of helps with that too, right? So is it Get Squirmy?
It's Get Squirmy.
Okay. When did you release it? Like, tell me about the process of making it and like what made it in, what didn't make it in to Get Squirmy.
We started with a card deck called Nookie, which had a limited release like 2 years ago probably. And we sold through those, and then kind of, it was like sort of our beta test. So we just got to poll a bunch of people of like what the favorite questions were, reassessed, and then added in some fresh ones. We also kind of play tested a lot of these questions at our like basically monthly event series, where we would just get to put them on tables and people would rotate around the room and get to answer the questions. So we got to get some really good data from that of seeing what stations really popped, you know? Plus we just bring it out to all of our parties.
All social events became Get Squirmy night, Nookie night.
Exactly.
Or once we just went to a bar and walked up to random tables of friends and we're like, hey, do you guys want to just play this game? And
I literally love that.
So it's 90 cards about sex and intimacy, and it's intentionally designed to be for people that you're dating, that you're sleeping with, or for friends. So it's not like about your relationship. It's not troubleshooting. It's not like, okay, this is about us, Kels. So it's really easy to kind of bring it into a lot of different contexts. And I think the friendship piece has resonated really well with people, like the ability to work it into friend hangs, because a lot of the couples decks out there are couples decks, and like the sex questions are about you as a couple. And, you know, if we're going to try to make sex easier to talk about, part of that is just with your gals, you know, or with like anybody in your life. And so getting to make a deck that's accessible to anyone and in any real context has been like really important for us to put out there. And then we try to kind of vary the experience with it too. So some of the cards are pretty explicit, pretty sexy, pretty squirmy. And then some of them are, you know, more emotional in tone and like a little more thoughtful and a little more reflective. And then some of them are just like really silly. Like one of my favorites is find 2 nearby objects and describe the sexual tension they have with each other.
I love that.
Or like find a nearby object and pitch it to me as a sex toy. You know, just like it gets weird and silly, but it's low stakes and it's just a way to have fun, and you can veto anytime you want. But we had a lot of fun with that. And it did become the basis of our event series that then just kind of gets people intentionally together in groups to have these types of conversations. And we like, you know, we'll use the deck as inspiration, but then expand and bring in all new sorts of conversation prompts and different themes and just, you know, try to work it in that way.
Yeah. I mean, the deck really does sound like it spans the range of intimacy and what intimacy is, because it can just be those hot sexual moves, or it can be those more emotional questions to, I guess, the sexual tension between 2 objects. You know what I mean? Like, what's the intimacy these objects share?
My favorite testimonial I've ever received, I have like a close group of guy friends, and there was 4 guys and me, and we were playing, and afterwards my friend is like, wow, like, I don't know, I've just never got to like hang with my bros and learn how they like their blowies, you know? And I get similar feedback at the events too. Like, I think being able to talk about sex with friends, like, this might be just in the circles that I run in or the people that we kind of talk to, but I feel like a lot of girlfriends have learned to have these like emotional, deeper conversations. But generally speaking, a lot of the men that I've talked to have said like they just don't really talk about sex that way, or like troubleshoot the like emotional elements of sex, or like any insecurities. Like, I think it's a lot less common. And so we've heard from a lot of men that have played the deck or been to the event events that like it's just so nice to have a space to do that and can feel maybe less intimidating than always talking about it with a partner. Like maybe that's a nice companion. It's a supplement. It's a supplemental way that you can talk about sexuality with a different stake than if it's like a person that you're fucking in front of you.
You know, I hear that a lot, and I always think it evolved from women talking out of safety, you know?
Yeah.
Like we need to find safety, so we create community around it. And I just don't think men had that motivation. Society put on them to be like the ones in charge or the instigator. So to them, it was probably just like admitting anything was wrong was probably a lot less societally accepted. Whereas for women, I always think it's a safety thing.
Yeah.
That is an excellent point. Just kind of shining light on how women have always kind of had these small groups, or like how gossip starts, you know, like ways of just sharing information that will help us keep us safe, or like help us navigate the world when maybe the external structures don't or didn't the same way as for men. I love that.
I work with a lot of men too. And then, you know, I realize they're coming to me because they don't feel safe talking about it. So safety is often the motivator for conversation starter. I do have a question about your in-person events. First of all, Portland, Oregon, from the outside, seems like the most advanced, forward-thinking, liberal city in the whole country, right? Do you find that is true for the people who come to your events? Like, are you attracting the average Portland type that is, you know, that's the stereotype. I'm asking you, is the stereotype true?
Yes and no. I think there's definitely this, you know, very progressive, strong sex positive, strong poly crew here in Portland for sure. And then you have everybody else and every kind of person for sure. And I think what I've found with our events is it really depends on the venue. It depends on our event partner and kind of which communities we're tapping into. Sometimes we get people at our events that seem pretty advanced in their sexual communication skills or in their kink or sex knowledge, and they're just like out to have a good time and meet new people, and it's less sort of a stretch for them. And then sometimes we have events where people are kind of more squirm curious, and they're like, I've never done anything like this before, and it is a stretch, and it's like a vulnerable thing to show up and talk to strangers about sex and dating and relationships and all that stuff. So I think, like, yes, there's certainly that stereotype that we see, and then there's everything.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, so if someone were to come visit Portland, they would not be out of place coming to an event.
No,
Absolutely
not at all. Yeah, I think we have like a series called the Group Chat, and that's like Squirm Level 1. So it's like kind of anybody welcome to come. You'll get something out of it no matter what. Really low pressure, low stakes, very, very, very fun. We do them every month. We do events at Soho House, and so that's also just like a really different audience for us. And we're doing more like parties and kind of deeper level Squirm stuff to come in the next summer and spring as well.
All right, awesome. And if I wanted to go find one of these, because Portland is not that far from Las Vegas, so
yeah, come.
I'm already thinking
we have it all on our website. So we have a tab that's events, and that just shows everything that's coming up. So getsquirmy.com, probably /events.
Yeah.
Okay, getsquirmy.com. But I recommend you just go to getsquirmy.com and dive into the podcast, the deck, and just the site overall. It is beautiful. It is informative. I loved it. Check it out. And that brings me to my final point. I want to wrap back around to the podcast. Like, there's information in there that I really want people to understand too, about like porn not being demonized and just understanding it on a deeper level. You have 6 episodes out. That was season 1.
Limited series. Yeah, so we decided we wanted to do this porn series and help people get more comfortable with the topic, help them kind of learn more about what actually happens in the porn industry, different types of porn that are out there. We include a mixture of experts. Like, we talk to a journalist who writes all about the business of the porn industry, which is super interesting, and like a sex therapist who deals with a lot of clients who feel like they have porn addiction. And then we talk to directors and performers in the industry. There's people who work in like porn literacy for teens, and just kind of try to get at this huge topic from a lot of different perspectives. And it was never our intent to try to persuade anyone to feel a certain way about porn or try to prescribe any sort of habit around porn. It's really just like, there's so much to say. There's so many people who know a ton about this and who work in the industry or outside the industry with like their expertise. So we bring all that. And then I think one of my favorite things is we just have sound bites and anecdotes from like a ton of just regular people, right? Like people who watch porn or don't, have strong feelings about it, have funny things to say, or powerful things to say. And we sprinkle that through. And then, of course, we host and we try to bring in some of the like nerdy stats and funny banter and just personalize it. It's really supposed to be like this sort of porn literacy audio journey that like teaches you a lot about the industry, hopefully quells some anxieties about it, hopefully helps you answer some questions you might have about porn in your life or your relationships. And then like we'll give you some very entertaining little sound bites about what's happening in like the weird wide world of porn.
And it is a weird and very wide world. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Tess and Kels, thank you so much for joining. For everyone who listened, I highly encourage you to go to getsquirmy.com to check it all out. Thank you both so much for joining.
Yeah.
Thank you. This was really fun.
So, and for everybody listening who wants to get their own Get Squirmy card deck, check the show notes for the discount code. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with anyone who might find it interesting. And if you have any questions or topics you'd like me to cover in future episodes, feel free to reach out. Email info@thekinkconsultant.com. Until next time, keep on kinking on.